And the first one is the finance structures of these projects. Construction costs have outpaced the rent and the sale price that developers are able to get from quality, well-designed housing. And so that, in my work, which has to do more with with the finance strategies for those projects, is finding sources of money that can offset or fill that gap between what a developer can charge and those construction costs. So in the United States, we have a tax credit structure that allows investors to buy the tax credits of a property or project that is affordable housing, has to be specifically affordable housing, and then they can offset their income taxes. So they will contribute, for example, $1 million to a property, and they will get $1,200,000 worth of tax credits. So it becomes an investment opportunity for them and really leverages the capital that can be contributed into a project in order to get it built. The second thought that came to mind when you asked that question has to do with how communities will receive the idea of affordable housing in their neighborhoods. And often because of not understanding a project or fearful of government or fearful of developers, there might be quite a bit of resistance to affordable housing. In the United States, there's still a bit of a stigma about affordable housing, that it is for people that are lowest of the level of society. But in reality, although there is a need for those that are homeless and those that are struggling in life to have quality housing, there is also a middle income group of people that are struggling to find affordable housing. So it's important that governments, developers, even architects, educate people on the importance of having affordable housing within their communities, that it can actually be a very positive and contributing aspect to their quality of life as well. I will mention Pruitt-Igoe because it was an example of essentially warehousing people, putting them in these towers. It was a modernist idea, putting them in towers and thinking that creating this beautiful park setting would in some way contribute to their quality of life. But the problem is the living conditions within those towers were awful, and they contributed to a life experience which was actually quite degrading. So what we've learned is that warehousing, that stacking of people in affordable housing is not the solution. That really bringing that scale down, having them be more engaged, having people be engaged in a community, in a social structure that is a part of the larger urban context, giving them access to outdoor public spaces, but also giving them kind of a reason to connect with the larger society. The other issue is that we took a particular type of person in an economic situation and we isolated them. We put them all over here thinking that, that was going to somehow solve the problem. But the reality is they weren't engaged in the larger society, in the larger community. So there really weren't opportunities for them to elevate their potential in life because they only knew what was within their own bubble of the world. So that was a misstep along the pathway, at least for the way that the United States did it. Now what we do is lower scale, a little bit lower density, and distribute them throughout the cities so that we have mixed income neighborhoods as opposed to lower income neighborhoods and higher income neighborhoods. That diversity of income actually creates a healthier, more vital city experience. Well, the first thing I would challenge is the notion that living in the suburbs is an American dream. That was the American dream at one time, and it was prevalent primarily in the 50s and 60s. It was this notion that the cities were starting to become blighted, starting to degrade, and it was better, it was thought that it was better to live outside the city. But then that created its own set of problems. First of all, what it did is it took not only housing out, and it took the wealthy out of the city. And so what was left were those that didn't have the economic strength to keep the city in good shape. What then happened is all the retail left. And so the cities just became blighted. But what's happened is the next generation, the generation we're in now, all of a sudden said, you know, the cities are kind of a cool place to be. Let's recreate them. So then all the people started coming back, and it was like, we kind of like these cities. We like rehabilitating older Victorian neighborhoods. We like the idea of walking down to the coffee shop instead of in the suburbs, which is we got to get in our car and drive over to this shopping mall and really not have any kind of vital life. It was really all about the car. And we realized, you know, so that's changed because now there are more people living in cities than there are in other places in the country. So first of all, it's letting go of that dream, letting go of thinking that that is the dream life. It's also about making sure that we do find ways to address the urban issues in the suburbs. Not unlike we had to address the urban issues that happened when there was a suburban exodus. So I'm beginning to see designers and planners take a look at, for example, these shopping malls with these large, vast parking areas, and realizing we could actually densify this. We could find better ways to handle parking and begin to create some of those lifestyle experiences that do exist in the downtown. So instead of a sea of parking, we're using those parking lots as redevelopment sites and actually introducing restaurants and coffee shops and pubs and things, bars and things that bring that sense of community in the public space back to life. Excellent question. I love that question because I had looked into it a little bit. I don't know a lot about all of the typologies that exist in Russia, but I did look at the kind of that typical panel 5-story home. And I noticed that some of them are actually quite nice. Some of them could be rehabilitated. The issue is not so much that they're beyond their economic life or that they're in any way blighted. And I also read that some people actually enjoy them for various reasons. They're not the problem. The problem is what is in the larger urban context that needs to occur so that the quality of life extends beyond just the home. Now, there are some older mass housing projects that probably have outlived their economic life and outlived their design life, if you will, or their value as a quality housing project. Those should probably be removed. But it's taking a selective approach. It's not a wholesale approach where everything just goes, because then what you're also doing is you're dispersing communities. And you really need to not disperse those communities, but to build upon those communities. We use a term sometimes called social engineering. And when you socially engineer a community, it will dissipate, it will go away. Instead of going in and saying, okay, this community, these are the stakeholders. What do you like about your neighborhood? What should we keep as a part of a redevelopment strategy? And how can we rehabilitate these selective buildings that still have economic value and still are contributing to someone's life, and then densify within that and build within that and add some more of those other kinds of uses. Found that architects, by virtue of the nature of the training they typically get, are focused on the object. They're focused on the thing of beauty, that building or house or even the office space or the interior environment. But what is necessary is to really see the larger urban context as the palette to work with and recognize that we need to experience what it's like to walk down a street, to walk down a sidewalk. What are we walking by? What's that visual experience? What's that visceral experience? What is it like to be in a street-like experience that creates the space of our existence? That's what improves our quality of life. So I think architects are beginning to shift to that. I think architects are beginning to sense that, but I still see in architecture education that it's about the object. It's about the piece, the set piece. And I always find it interesting when designers are still doing renderings and photographing buildings from a distance, as if it's an object, instead of show me the space that you created in the urban environment that contributed not only to the people that are in that building, but contributed to the entire city.